Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I'm going to be joined in a moment by Nick from the YouTube channel. So Nick's going to be joining me in just a moment, and we're going to be talking about, lots of different aspects of OCD. Probably go in a bit to sensory motor OCD, as that's the topic that Nick often speaks about on the channel. Probably done 30, 40 videos on there. Probably sick of the number of sensory motor OCD videos we've done on there. But as it's a topic that never got covered much, I really wanted to make sure it was covered. For myself, I suffered from sensory motor OCD, and yes, I will save this Instagram Live, definitely. When I was suffering from sensory motor OCD, I could barely find anything on the subject, so it was very difficult, and I thought that was the one fear that I'd never get over, sort of being internally tortured by that for life. I was absolutely convinced of that. Word of the day, solipsism. Yeah, we can, we'll cover a bit on solipsism today, existential OCD, in relation to the post I did on Instagram stories a bit earlier. We're just waiting for Nick to join, and then you can ask us any questions in the comments below in relation to OCD, and myself and Nick will answer them. We'll go into sensory motor OCD. We'll talk a little bit. Well, here's Nick now. So let's just add Nick, and then we will be ready. 1 second. Just waiting for Nick to join me.
What's up?
Mr. Nick, how are you?
Good. Just got back from the mountains.
Did you have a nice time hiking in the mountains?
We actually drove. We found a new road, and the road goes for like 20 miles, just like along cliffs. It's really cool.
How much hiking have you done in this week? Because by the number of messages I get in the group chat, you're hiking every day.
This week was weird because I had a buddy visit. So 47 miles.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot for someone like you, who's very obsessive when it comes to climbing.
I love it. I know. It's not, this next week I have to bring it down a little bit.
That's very good. Very good. Nick, I was just introducing, before you came on just now, I was saying that we would talk a little bit about sensory motor OCD, and we would talk, we won't go too much on that because you've done a lot of videos on the topic, and we're going to talk a little bit about the topic of why acceptance doesn't mean agreement, and why acceptance doesn't mean you lose your feelings and lose your identity and who you think you are, which is a common misconception you often see on social media of, what if I stubbornly refuse to make myself miserable, then I will lose all my feelings, and the mistakes there around losing anger and losing feelings and all that kind of stuff. So should we start there? Why don't you go into that a bit, Nick, talking about that, about losing feelings and acceptance isn't agreement.
Okay, give me 1 second. Look what I got. This is what you need. I'm putting it on my tripod stand.
Yeah, that is exactly what I need instead of using my arm.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
I have actually got I have actually got a tripod here somewhere. So I might change things up and start using a tripod.
It just works better. That way we don't sit there and just, have strains in our neck the whole time.
Yeah, as a chiropractor, that's probably what you've noticed about me, and it's definitely a change I need to be making.
So ask the question again. What was the first thing you wanted to talk about?
I want you to explain why the book How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable doesn't mean you lose all your feelings, and so all your feelings go out the window, you can never feel anything again, and you feel numb. That common misconception. You see that often on social media where people really don't understand it and sort of, oh no, that will make me lose my feelings and I'll be numb and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so there's some of the main people actually in that research field, really big public speakers. I read a couple of their books, and I remember one of the things said that stoicism is not good because it removes emotion. That was by a world-class speaker, and I said to myself, that person doesn't quite understand what stoicism mean, obviously. Now,
Yeah.
the number one thing I think that people get wrong is that you and me both understand that what developing REBT, CBT, Stoicism, and looking at life in a rational sense really actually means is you remove the aspect of your life to have that irrational response. Because it's not that you're not going to be...
Exaggerated response.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't lose any sort of emotion, but you get all of the benefits of seeing things and thinking, okay, well, I don't agree with that person, but I'm not going to yell at them, which doesn't get you anywhere. So I would say most people that talk about Stoicism, and I've had conversations with a couple of my buddies who are pretty educated on philosophy, even they thought that. They said, oh, when you're a Stoic, you have no emotion. I'm like, no, that's not what it means. It just means that the aspects of chronic anger and all the unhealthy emotions start to go out the window. And again, like we said, that doesn't mean you're not gonna like every situation. Because what do we get right all the time? They ask us, or they ask me, and I'm sure you get it. Well, does that mean I have to like having OCD? Let's just say OCD. No one says to themselves, I love having OCD. That's just not real. Now, you and me understand that the journey...
You get people who even say that. You get people who say that nonsense, say things like, well, I don't want to lose OCD because it makes me have my own sort of control and it's like a unique part of me. You know, you get that nonsense.
Yes,
too.
I've seen videos. If you go onto YouTube and they have tens of thousands of views,
you nearly said you porn there. That was a bit of a big slip up for you.
It will say something like the benefits of OCD. None, zero. The benefits come from the recovery process and changing your perspectives. There's no benefits of that's like saying the benefits of having cancer. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. You can get diagnosed with cancer like my dad.
Benefits from the perspectives of having cancer, the same as the benefits for the perspectives of having OCD, but no benefit for having cancer itself.
No, there's no benefits from a malignant tumor eating away at your tissue. There's no benefit from a maladaptation, whatever the research shows about the brain condition of OCD. But as you and me understand, I mean, when you start going through OCD recovery, it doesn't take too long until you start realizing, wow, people are pretty irrational. You know, people really do, as Albert Ellis says, they're their own worst enemy. They create all of these problems.
Of course, all the things Albert Ellis was up against when he invented what he did, it was because humans are so irrational, they miss the rational points. And then they're like, instantly when something feels uncomfortable, that doesn't work, that whatever. And it was like what my work has been around for the last 10 years is, you know, this is the most important element of OCD recovery. If you were more rational, that exaggerated response would turn down in your head.
Yes.
Because that idea that I can just turn off the anxiety response with sort of looking at the thoughts differently don't work for most people.
No, and as you and me both know, also when we talk about accepting the worst case scenario, not only does that perspective have benefit for long term, but it's also very important for the recovery process, because you can be chronically anxious and totally see it differently. And Erica said the best thing, and this talks about agreement versus acceptance. Erica said that, and Sadie's done great videos on cancel culture and how she struggled with that. Erica said, cancel culture is a symptom of low frustration tolerance. Think about that.
Very much like that.
It is. And it's not that you have to, there's plenty of things I don't agree with that people do, but it makes no sense to write a human off for one. We all say things we don't mean in our lives. We've all done that. If everyone got their life...
That was the exact case for Albert Ellis with the rational thinking when he started. He was talking all specifically about rational thinking, and people were like, oh, that makes it too numb. Oh, that simplifies it. Oh, that makes it too, if you do that, it will make it too, it's too simplistic, and sort of all these things. And it's like, hell yeah, it's simplistic. That's why it's damn good. Because if it was so complicated, you wouldn't get better. So it was great. He provided that solution, and it worked. The problem is it got lost along the way, because rational thinking, if you look at your things, it's just seeing reality for what it is. without the irrational nonsense that we bring up in our head.
Yes, and we don't. This is something that you and me probably, we always talk about how, acceptance is something that you feel. And this is a great example about how you know that you're starting to see things rationally. When there's things in your life that you've never worked on, and then you look at yourself, you're like, wow, I responded way more. Like for me, I never actively worked on, like, say when Daisy would come in and like interrupt.
Daisy's your dog, just so people know. Otherwise, they might think you've got like two girlfriends on the go, Erica and Daisy.
Exactly.
It's not the best look for this talk.
But like, so Daisy would come in and like bark at me when I would be doing like notes for my work, and I would get so angry and anxious. But I never worked on that. But then all of a sudden, I just realized like 10 months later that it doesn't affect me anymore, because the rational, and that's what you and me understand. Like when you work on low frustration tolerance, when you work on acceptance, it bleeds into all areas of your life.
100%. That's what people often don't realize about OCD and all the things that we teach. This isn't skills for OCD. This is skills for life. This is changing your perspective on life. This means that it doesn't matter if it's an OCD fear, if it was real or not, your perspective of the situation's problem. That's where I was stuck for years. I'll just tell yourself it's not OCD, it's not OCD. Oh my God, what if it is? No, it isn't. It's just not OCD, not OCD. And that became a compulsion, because in reality, the things that I was scared of wasn't scary at all, even in those, whether it's a cancer, whether it's going to jail, whether it's being homeless, whatever it is, whatever.
Yes, and if it wasn't the perspective, as you and me both know, my favorite Albert Ellis examples, the train station's my favorite, right? You're standing on the train platform and someone's poking you in the back, poking you, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to turn around and punch this guy in the face. And you turn around and it's someone who's blind, and they're poking
the famous Ellis analogy, yeah.
And immediately, the situation didn't change. The activating event is the same, but your perception on the situation.
Boom, 1 second, suddenly from anger to, oh my God, how could I even think that?
Exactly.
That perspective.
It's a great way to look at it. And the other one, which was in the anger book, which you
just to Ellie's question, who is Albert Ellis, Nick?
So Albert Ellis, so you know me, I love this stuff. Albert Ellis, 1955, created REBT, which is Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy, which is the precursor to cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, Dr. Albert Ellis was a psychoanalyst, the Sigmund Freud methods, basically what was the big psychotherapeutic approaches in that period. He also was a sex counselor. He was a marriage counselor. He realized after 3 years...
She just wanted the short answer. You just need to say, founded REBT.
You know me, I love this stuff. But he realized in REBT, making REBT, that getting people to just dive into their past wasn't getting him the results that he wanted. And that's what we always talk about, as you and me both know. And the other great analogy that you and me have talked about is so true. If someone comes to you and they're a tennis player and you say, wow, your forehand sucks. You don't say this to them. Let's spend 3 months diving into why you developed.
Ellie, you're going to regret asking him that. She says she wants to hear it all. You're going to regret it. I'm going to regret
it. So just really, but yeah, so he was a psychoanalytic, basically invented REBT in 1955, created the Albert Ellis Institute of New York, and he got a lot of backlash. I mean, you're right, Rob. He got a lot of backlash because, I mean, like we always talk about, it doesn't matter who you are in life. If you do something different, by default, people will question you. People
of course.
It's just life. That's part of unconditional life acceptance.
And what he was doing was just applying teachings of life and reality, and that how that works to the theory for understanding why we disturb ourselves. And that is exactly the same as what we do in relation to OCD and anxiety, is just really looking at what are the core fears? Why are we so scared? And how is that in reality, as opposed to the nonsense we imagine in our head? And that is what makes the difference, you know? And it's so key. And I've always, you know, with OCD, it's stubborn, you know, and the problem with OCD is most people out there with chronic OCD usually are still on some level coasting. Yeah, usually on some level coasting. Because to get under it, most people, 90% people, don't understand how it works. It's not rocket science, but because for so long it's been sort of dismissed as in a simplistic terms of it's thoughts are thoughts, changing our relationship with the thoughts. Now, we can create that distance where we don't feel that sort of glue-like fixation where we're sort of latched at the core to the fear, we're fused to it, so to speak. That we can't create that distance often in lots of cases. Mild cases, yes. A lot of cases are chronic, but it often won't separate, especially in my own case, and especially since working with you towards recovery with sensory motor, completely fused. Rob, I can't live like this. If I've got this thought of my saliva, there's no way I can breathe, no way I can live. It's so painful. How can I even go on? That story that we all know too well.
Yes, and another great one is we now know the newer type stuff that I've been dealing with. And this is important to talk about because you and me both know from experience and other moderators and people that recover, it's very easy to think at the chronic level for most of us that we're going to get over the main fear and then never have anything else to work on. I would say of all the moderators...
That's why a lot of people get stuck on POCD because they think, oh my God, I really don't want that one because that's the scariest one I've ever heard of. Or the same with sensory motor. For me, sensory motor was probably the scariest because I thought, I can't see how I can create separation in my mind between it and the fear. I can't see how I can create that separation because it's in me. So it's not got an external exposure and it hasn't got something where you can avoid or change perspective. You can't avoid sensory motor. I mean, you tried it playing computer games all the time and vaping all day long, but it certainly didn't work.
No, and then when I quit, it hits you like a ton of bricks. And I mean, here's the thing. You can walk, you and me both know this. You can walk around all day because agreement and acceptance without a proper understanding, you can get them confused. So I understand why people get them confused. Because people will tell you, right, in sensory motor, they'll tell you to walk around all day and say, oh, all humans salivate. This is true. But here's the problem. Your brain will say, but what if you salivate more? What happens if there's something wrong with you? And you just...
What if you can't? What if your brain's broken? This is what used to do me. What if your brain's broken so the reflection on your saliva doesn't can't turn off? Like, because I used to see OCD as this kind of like bully that was something inside me sort of pushing me to do the negative thing or concentrate on the negative thing. So I was always thinking, well, if I can't stop concentrating on the negative thing from internally, then I'll just be concentrating on that all the time. And I couldn't see how I could create that divide. And because it was like, oh God, look, you know, go on forums, sensory motor is like a much smaller category, and then it's pretty bleak in there. Usually loads of reassurance and super negative of like, I've gone from 10 therapists, never recovered, 20 years of hell, that stuff. So I was thinking, fuck, how am I ever going to get out of this? What a bloody curse I've got here. And that's why we do so much work on that specific topic, sensory motor, because it ain't a curse. It's just your perspective that's keeping you stuck.
Yeah, and as you and me both know, with people we've both talked to, in the seminars and the people just in the community, because it's not very well understood and because a lot of people are, unfortunately, who are helping people, it's not that they're meaning to do it maliciously, but they don't understand how much reassurance they're giving someone. Like I talked to someone where they're like, my therapist or my coach, whoever, told me to just walk around all day and say to myself, it's okay to blink. Yeah, but that's a mantra. And that
becomes a compulsion.
It's a compulsion. Yeah.
I understand how people can get to that position because it's not easy to understand OCD. And although we know when we're talking sort of to really change beliefs and quite forcefully there, you've got to take that back step and say, well, look, it's like when people say, I hate it that no one understands I've got OCD and understands what it is. And it's like, well, how much do you know about a particular disease of the kidney? You don't, because you wouldn't know. And so it's understandable people think the way they do because they just haven't learned that.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good thing to cover as well because it's a...
Brianna Hubert's just said there, for months I had a therapist that said it was childhood trauma stuck in my body causing sensory motor OCD.
Yes, and I know that's a very hot topic, and Brianna, we've talked about this. You've talked about this.
Because it's a popular word, trauma, at the moment. People often say a trauma. It's become a word that's used like that, and it's not what people often think it is.
No, and even
It's from
if you look,
mainly, like I was trying to say on Instagram stories the other day, is although it's a sort of a combo of these factors, in most cases, what people are looking at is just high anxiety symptoms at the time.
yes, and here's a great example. If you look at, I like using very drastic examples because it shows people how you can change your perspectives. If you want to talk about trauma in the last 100 years, what would be the worst trauma someone could probably experience?
Coming on this Instagram live and having to listen to you. Up there.
Auschwitz, okay?
Yeah.
I've watched many documentaries about Auschwitz. I have seen people who have been utterly destroyed by Auschwitz. They died with PTSD and chronic depression. Then you look at like Kitty Hart, that female girl who's done the documentaries, and you look at Viktor Frankl. Well, they were all at Auschwitz. Why are they seeing things differently? Because they all experienced the same trauma. They saw people die every single day. They were basically brutally malnourished.
Different beliefs and different perspectives.
That and the reason why I like Man's Search for Meaning so much is because if Viktor Frankl can change his beliefs on, I mean, listen, if you suffered with OCD for 3 years in the severely chronic level, you see me, Rob. I can go hike, hang out with friends. Listen, when you're in Auschwitz, you're not hiking and you're not hanging out with friends. You're not enjoying bread. You're not enjoying the
You may
things.
still be socializing with friends. I'm sure they would say they still socialized, and I'm sure even in the most adverse times, people still shared the odd jokes and things like that and stories, because humans do that. Even if you're in a war zone, whatever, they
you got to.
They adapt.
Yeah, they do. That's a good point. But what I was trying to say is you can change your perspective. And as you and me both know, when I talk to people with physical symptoms of anxiety, somatic OCD, I always start by saying it's hard to see that first, but it's not the thing itself. It's the perspective. It's an aspect to it. It is annoying to have constant hyper awareness, but if you never knew what OCD was and it was never a thing, we lived in some alternate dimension, it might not even bother you because you wouldn't be. It's not as simple as the event, the trauma. This person is the reason why you feel that way. And we see that all the time. Ready? That person made me angry. They actually didn't. They might have been contributing to a frustrating event, but there's a very clear difference between this event, OCD sensation is frustrating, versus this needs to go away right now. It's ending my life. It's catastrophic.
What Brianna Hubert has just said there, but that's all it is, annoying. And even that, we can change our perspective.
Yes, it is definitely an area where, I mean, let's be real, Rob. You and me, we talk about this. I mean, we have a society that's built on comfort. So naturally,
everything's sold on comfort. You go to buy a car, it's a picture of a nice family with their dog going into a field, going into the house. Everything is sold on comfort. Everything that people want, the Netflix, the couch, the everything. Comfort,
everything.
Comfort.
So when you tell people, when you say to them something like you said to me, you know, what if I told you that it would take you 3 years to recover? And I'm like, oh, no way. You know, because we're so sold on instant gratification. It's not that, it's not that instant gratification is inherently bad, but too much of it does bring down your frustration tolerance.
Low frustration tolerance, one of the key principles there of the Alice books, where we've got to, and overlapping with the work of Claire Weeks, one of the great anxiety pioneers, wearing the anxiety like an uncomfortable coat. It's like pain management, which obviously you do a lot of within your job with people with spinal related pain and muscular pain in the back. It's a perspective of pain. I mean, there's loads of analogies relating to that, and that's exactly the same as with OCD.
Yeah, my patients are actually quite lucky because I've had 2 patients in the last 2 months who had no structural abnormalities, and I said to them, I think all of your pain perception, from my experience, they don't even know about this, and what the literature says, is coming from your fear. And then they're like, no, there's something wrong with me. Very similar to OCD. It must be real. But when I teach them, because they don't have a disorder, they see it pretty quickly. They're like, oh, wow, like I can rotate my neck without being afraid. People forget that the brain is just trying to protect you and that mechanism. But if you
and the same in OCD, it's like a fairy godmother that's like very, very sort of violent, you know.
It's so true, and I think that's probably why we talk about agreement versus acceptance so much, because it's very easy to walk around and agree all day long, not knowing it's a mantra compulsion, not knowing that you're still trying to escape, not knowing that you're using the internal thermometer to gauge how you're feeling from moment to moment. And that is, you know, because we know, what do we get asked every day, Rob, right? How do I bring down the rumination? You can only do so much when you're really scared. It's not going to come down until you get the fear down. If you're still scared, if you're scared of your saliva, it's automatic. You're going to check it.
Yeah, and your saliva is going to be around a lot because
it's going to be around. It's going to be there.
You're going to feel that. You know, it's like all of these things in the journey. Like someone just said in the comments just a little bit before. Someone said in a comment, they said, what I like about what we're doing is that the people is lived experience, not just reading it from a book, although we're referencing a lot of books, and it's sort of through the navigation of everything that we've been through over the years. People tend to think that OCD journeys are similar, run along similar sort of genetic patterns completely. That's not the case. You get mild OCD, you get chronic OCD that can be sort of quite light. It's chronic, but it's kind of light when you have the approach with thoughts of thoughts, it can lift. But then in a lot of cases, certainly the case with me, certainly the case with you, super latched, didn't let go, just couldn't see how I could release it, going from book to book, trying to relabel thoughts, trying to reattribute thoughts, all this stuff.
Yeah, we know the relabeling, We know that with sensory motor, there is no relabeling with sensory motor, because that is a physiologic sensation. You're not relabeling anything. I mean, the reality is, and what makes sensory motor...
And it's kind of patronizing after a while, because it's like, yeah, but you're still not viewing it as a thought. And it's like, no, I don't think you realize I can't view it as a thought when it's a real event. So that means it's real. So to view it as a thought doesn't seem accurate. So therefore, it's going to stay latched. It's so important to see that the core fears are what fuels it and what's getting under the surface. But when you're hearing that over and over, you think, what the fuck am I doing wrong? Like, I've been trying so hard. I've been going to loads of therapy, I've been doing loads of ERP, I've been reading loads of books. Like I was thinking, God, my mind just must be weak, or I must have just done something wrong, or I'm just some rare case that doesn't get it, or I'm stupid, or whatever. And you go down that path.
Yeah, and sensory motor is a great one for the exposure one, because it's one of those, it's almost like real event and false memory, where exposures, it's not as straightforward as an outward compulsion, like for, you know, contamination OCD or harm OCD if you're hiding knives. You definitely still have to work on the core fear if you're afraid you're going to hurt your children. But with sensory motor, when people used to say to me, you have to work on exposures, I would say to myself, I'm exposed all day. I mean, I'm already salivating as a human being. Like, I've been salivating since the day I was born. So there's something else. There's another catalyst here. And that catalyst is the perspective.
The irrational belief that if I'm stuck forever, that will be awful because I'll never get out of the cycle. If I'm stuck forever, that will be unbearable. If I'm stuck forever, my life is ruined. If I'm stuck forever, there's something broken and malfunctioning. How horrendous that is to have such a brain in me, you know, all these
and think about why those fears stick, and why, like we know, POCD, what the societal beliefs may stick, because it's a scary thing. But
yeah, and then you get the misconception straight away with that one of, oh my God, does that mean I agree with it? No. It's a different thing. Unconditional self-acceptance does what it exactly says on the tin. But without reading the books by Ellis, the How to Stubbornly book, the Myth of Self-Esteem, and so on, it's very, very difficult to internalize or to even understand the concepts. Because with OCD, you're going to doubt everything and want to jump back, you know? And then, oh, actually, no, that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense. I can see that approach. And then when something's not too simple, we like to jump back to, but I want a simple approach. I want the thoughts of thoughts, just feel anxiety, like a lot of the Claire Weeks books, which had a lot of core principles, but often a bit too light for OCD. Plenty of people over the years, you know, I spent a long time in forums, sort of veterans of the OCD forums back in the day, you know, used to always preaching about Claire Weeks all the time. And then, you know, after a while, over a period of years, it then developed that people were like, no, actually, Claire Weeks doesn't tend to cut it for severe OCD, doesn't tend to cut it. And then that became more known and so on. And it takes a while for these new changes in thinking, these new adjustments in the process towards recovery take place, take position. It's an evolutionary process towards what works best, where in the future, I'm sure we will see the process maybe will go to an Elon Musk's Neuralink or a CRISPR or some other technological advance that makes a change, and then the evolutionary process will sort of bypass what we're doing now. Maybe sadly, because they miss out on a lot of those philosophy benefits, but maybe they can do a software update to the brain at that point with all the relevant information coming from the books and so on. But it's from a sort of evolutionary recovery process, what works wins. And that's the bottom line. If something's not working for you, you try something else. And at the end of the day, that doesn't mean trying radical ideas like going into the jungle and taking ayahuasca. That means it means it's about thinking about and nothing here against psychedelics anyway, but not for future when they become medically approved, not in the current way. And in OCD, it's not really needed. It will be I don't want to go into that topic. I've done a video on that, talking about future of OCD treatment that you can see on our YouTube channel. But to not go off topic there, it's an evolutionary process of what works. And we see that thoughts of thoughts isn't doing it. It doesn't cut it for OCD. So we've been raising awareness for so long, and you'll see by, you know, if you just look at our account and all the different people that could come to us and the Facebook groups and so on, all the reviews and all the stories and different therapists over the years that have been in with us and we've got better from OCD and so on, and all different backgrounds and really hard cases where people have had deep brain stimulation and still not recovered. And not that deep brain stimulation, I very rarely see positive cases, but I'm saying that even in those cases. So it's about looking at what is causing you to be afraid. People say treatment resistance. We know that treatment resistance doesn't exist, but it's a common word that we hear in the OCD community because people don't understand that it is the core fear there that is at play still, pounding away in the background. Anything you'd like to add there, Nick?
I think that, and we won't talk about it for long, but I think it could be important to just give my perspective on it. I mean, I live in Colorado. Everything is legal here. It's Colorado. I mean, it's a very progressive area. So I have experiment with microdosing and stuff like that, and I can be very clear with people that it doesn't do what we think it does. Because when you come down from, whether it's deep brain stimulation, what happens, right? They get it with so much hope. You go in with the hope, and then you come out and you wake up and you're like, then you just tank. How could you not? Because you think to yourself, this was it. You know, this was the last thing. Because you always hear people, right? And it's good to talk about that because I hear people talk about
it helps ease in the process of acceptance in bits by bit. I mean, Alan Watts said about sort of psilocybin and so on. He said like it's picking up the sort of the microscope, looking through it, but it's not about staying with your eye glued to it. So you get an insight and then you go away. But what you're saying there, but before you finish, is I imagine it's like the same with ketamine infusion. For a lot of mild anxiety, it can be sort of overall lifting, but with OCD, it tends to keep biting away and give a short-term relief initially. That tends to be.
And that's the key right there. I mean, the thing is this: you could microdose psilocybin, mushrooms. The reality is this: yes, you might see the relief, but again, that doesn't help you change your beliefs. You know what I mean? In order to change,
it's the same as what Gilles has said there. CBD oil is the same, Nick. People have hope it will help their anxiety, not going to make it go. I see that being sold on social media all the time,
It's all the time.
by accounts that I think, God, you know, this is a really reputable place, and they're flogging CBD all the time, and it's like it's not the best way. Same with vitamins. You see how many posts I see saying like 6 vitamins for the really good help recovery, and it's like, I haven't seen any recovery cases from vitamins. It's madness that this is still being suggested, but you see it all the time.
Yeah, I
you
see.
know?
I have patients now I have a patient who's been on legal psilocybin microdose daily for 18 months. Great, lots of great qualities, still very irrational. It maybe has given him like medications, taking the edge off. But for us, in order for us to get where we want to go, these things might have benefits in time and places, but you and me know, changing your belief with the fear, it takes time and practice and patience, ups and downs, and
Process.
it's a
Not
process.
A quick fix.
And it's very.
It doesn't take forever.
It doesn't take forever, and it has a lot of great benefits because people, as you and me know, anger is something. What did Albert Ellis say? Anger is the one emotion that humans don't want to give up, because we believe that anger pushes us to get what we want, and it doesn't. It doesn't do that like we think it does. In most situations, we're not talking about overthrowing a dictatorship or some. We're talking
fighting a bear.
Exactly. We're talking about the average conversations that
That's why
have.
people don't want to give it up often, because they think, oh my God, if I give up anger, what if I get in a fight and then I'm not angry? Well, you can call it up in those moments. It's like, you're not you're gonna find it hard to be so rational that if someone hits you in the face that you just feel the pain and leave it. You could do it, but it probably wouldn't be advisable in a case where you're about to get attacked.
No. And it's, I would say, I've been working with you for a year and a half. I developed chronic OCD in June of 2019. So whatever it is, 2.5 years almost. I would say I've learned more about life and perspectives in these last 2 years whilst having a lot of suffering than in the 29 years prior with no, OCD at the chronic level. You and me know this. You're not going to meet a chronic OCD sufferer and they're just going to be like, 1 minute I never had, you had OCD tendencies. When you have chronic OCD, there was things in your life that led up to where that was, you and me know, the light switch, right?
Like that Seamus just said, their anger never helps in high pressure situations, hinders any clarity.
Absolutely, 100%. And as any of you know, I mean, Brianna, we've talked about this, Rob, anger was something that you were like, look, you said to me, look, you can get your anger under control and really work on your beliefs, you can empower your life. You said that.
Yeah, I always think you can tell somebody who doesn't understand acceptance by how angry they are. So if you've got somebody who is really angry all the time, it's pretty clear they're not very good at acceptance. They don't understand it or embodied it. You'll often hear people say like, but I've allowing myself to be angry and stuff. It was not really demonstrating the points that you're trying to learn if you're constantly angry. And you see this with a lot of therapists, you see it with coaches and so on, where they're constantly angry about certain things. You think, well, God, that doesn't look like they're going to be able to help me too much if they're getting angry all the time like that, things like that.
Yeah, and I see it because I have family members, like I'm sure many of us do, who are, when you start to become more rational, and you like, so your family members is a great thing. You see it, and has its own tricky, because my mom has seen me since I was a kid. Now I was, so it's hard for her to see past that. But it's interesting because when you see people and how angry they get, and how angry I used to get, once I read and started educating myself on the beliefs about anger, that must not happen to me. That person must never do that to me. The must, oughts, and the shoulds. I realized just how much of my day
was taken up by that, and how draining.
And it was all because of my beliefs.
And wanting power over that situation and feeling vulnerable in the past in that situation, wanting to reclaim that. And the problem is, you see lots of people, they're like, they really believe in anger, like, oh yeah, it's doing all these benefits for me. But I always say to them, is it? Is it actually changing your life in the direction that you want to go? Is it actually empowering your life towards the goals that you're trying to achieve? And usually, always, pretty much always, it isn't. Yeah.
No.
And that's the case, but people don't understand it because people want to hold on to that emotion. Like Albert Ellis used to always say, he said, anger is the one emotion that people want to cling on to so much. You see it all the time.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. It usually comes down to, especially in like a debate on any topic, whether it's OCD, politics, money, it almost always, from what I see, stems from the belief that you must prove them wrong. I must prove them wrong. And
Yeah,
Oliver,
almost like it's a godlike or universal demand that you feel needs to be matched in the air in the universe to make sure that everything is kept in position. That's the problem. Because it took me a long time to realize that it's not written in the sky, not etched into the floor, these beliefs that we tend to hold about right, wrong, good, bad. William Shakespeare's quote, good and bad, it's only thinking. I'm not going to do the exact quote because I can't remember off the top of my head. Good and bad is only thinking makes it so.
It's like this. There's no such thing as good and bad. Only thinking makes it so.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great quote.
And that's a fact. That's reality. Good and bad is invented by humans. Rhino isn't thinking about good and bad when he charges another rhino's baby. But then people say, oh, well, they don't know. No, they don't have a concept of good and bad.
No. It's definitely interesting because as Eric and I were just driving back from the mountains, we tend to have a lot of, because as you know, if you have a loved one.
Just to answer that question there, do you both have OCD? Yes, me and Nick both have OCD. That's not bothering us now, but in relation to OCD, very severe. You can look through this page, tons of physical anxiety, themes locked on for years, severe chronic OCD. And Nick was in a very bad position in mental health hospital, suicide attempts, and so on. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you could definitely, and it's very easy to think that with so much, it's so easy, right? You go on this, right? You and me always say this. If you and me went on YouTube and we posted a very rational talk, let's say with a good following, a couple thousand views, title the video this, treatment-resistant PTSD, 200,000 views in one day.
Yeah.
Because people go, ooh, I'm treatment resistant. I knew it.
Or anything negative.
Yeah,
always gets the most posts. Yeah.
It's the truth. I mean,
Same as the opposite with very bland posts. A post on Instagram of like, OCD is hell, negative but simplistic. Boom, 50,000, 20,000 likes. How to recover from OCD, 10 points, 300 likes. Yeah.
Exactly. And it all comes down to that comfort, easy way out. What do we always see, Rob? Like we said, it's not that these things don't have benefit, but recover with vitamins, like you said, minerals. Recover with diet. Recover with meditation. I know many people who meditate on a daily basis, and they have never made any change in their life for years. They're my good friends. They all about meditation, but they fall into the same irrational belief traps because meditation has benefits for being in the moment, maybe helping with short-term stuff, maybe problematic for OCD people when it's used as a compulsion.
Especially with sensory motor, where you're drawing yourself internal.
It's just not necessary. And I've had talks with people, they've asked me.
Can help with distancing, but tends to often draw people internal into the internalized cycle.
Absolutely.
Where they're better external connection.
Yeah. And when you tell people, they're always, as OCD sufferers, we always want that secret. There's always the secret. As I just told my buddy who just relapsed in his addiction, I said to him, there is no secret. It's hard work.
Secret tips and tricks. That's the most common question I get every day. Rob, give me some quick tips and tricks. Now I'm on the bus. I'm going somewhere. I need to have my OCD gone because I've got a date at 3 o'clock.
Not happening. Zero.
I get those. And I was one of those people who used to ask those questions. Because when you want rid of it, you think, how on earth can't it be a quick fix? Google. There must be a guy with a quick fix. It's got to be that simple. Just something changes in my head with a quick fix. It feels like that, but it's not that in reality.
And how about this, too? This is the other good part. And this is why when you and me, we laugh when people talk about, recover in 3 to 6 months. How about this phase of recovery that no one ever talks about? You've started to become rational. You've read the books. You're applying the tools. 9, 10 months in, you have a relapse, a bad one. And you go, I'm going to hammer acceptance. I'm going to dispute more. And it's so funny because the journey is not like you always say. It's not like this. It's not like this. It's all over the place.
Exactly.
Because you're gonna have I'm sure, Rob, you were the same way. I was the same way. When you find something that does help with your beliefs, well, you think more is better when you start.
Yeah, and that can be chasing a compulsion all day long.
All day. And then it takes, and I like it beautifully in an old video. She said, every time I had a relapse, it showed me something new I had to work on with my beliefs. And that stuck with me. That
exactly. It's like levels in the game Super Mario. New game, new levels.
Yes. And it has different parts of the recovery. But the good thing is about the whole thing is every single time you have a setback or a relapse, you can basically, I don't know how to say this, but your rational thinking becomes more adopted. It
gives you a chance to adopt it, and it's the building blocks of the recovery process.
Yes, and
it's what's going to empower you to change.
And trust me, Rob, you and me both know this. When I was severely, chronically suffering with somatic OCD, if you told us right now that there was a 5-minute fix you and me both would have done it. Anyone would have do it. But I get why people look for it. It seems like the way to go, but the process is just it's not rocket science. We know that. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to understand OCD recovery, but you do got to have a decent understanding of, reassurance seeking, your compulsive behaviors, backdoor spikes so you don't engage, and you will.
Of course, knowledge of OCD is the often missed thing. People think, oh, I can just do the rational or just this. It's like, it's a process. It's the rational, it's the changing relationship with the thoughts, the uncertainty, and having a much improved knowledge of OCD, so you're aware of the ways it's going to come at you, and so you have a good a lot of things in your toolbox for how to handle things when it morphs and changes. I've got to go now, so otherwise I would carry on talking to you about this all evening, as you know, Nick, because you're fantastic on here, and it's great to have you here. And I hope we've covered so many of the things that you guys wanted to see. We're going to be doing a lot more of these Instagram lives with lots of different guests. Nick will be on here a lot, covering all things in relation to sensory motor OCD and other areas.
We can't have Moment on here, no.
We can't have Moment on. No, we try and avoid having him on, but we will have some of the other guys on here later in the next couple of weeks. Guys, great to have you all on here. If you want anything that you want to ask on the next Instagram live, just DM this account, OCD Recovery UK, and we will get those questions answered. Thanks again, Nick.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
See you on
You're
the next
welcome.
one. Take it
Later.
easy. Bye.